We're all worried. Everywhere in Europe seems to be suffering from a drought, and it's increasingly every year. And we want our gardens to be lovely and green at the time of year when we're really using them. How often should we water, and what are the golden rules? Well, I've read things like you should water 1 inch every week in dry periods. Now, I really don't like those sort of rules. I really think gardening has no rules, and I think it's better just to judge what your plants need, and you want to train your plants to adapt to your conditions. Now that might sound completely bonkers, but I tell you it's not. I'll show you some examples. So this plant is a case in point. It's a Mickia Zygomeres, and it's a lovely plant, very unusual, and it's from the pea family, and it's got these really beautiful, rather strange flowers. But its foliage now is a wee not as perky as it should be. And as soon as it needs water, it tells you. Now, I've got it in a much too small a pot. It is actually hardy to -10, so I'm going to put it in the ground where it'll be much happier. But you have to watch it, because every night as it gets dark, its leaves completely fold down and it just looks like it's droughted. But it's not. That does that every evening when it's dark. But in daylight, if it goes droopy, then you feed it. And I put on a can of water, or half a can. Box, I find when box gets really dry, it goes a very deep, almost bluey green, and so that gives you an idea. But box is pretty drought resistant. Now this is slightly brown on the ends because it was clipped within a week of it being really hot. If you're going to clip a box, you want to leave it. You want to try and clip it so it's not going to be really hot for at least a week afterwards, or you should cover it. Come and look at some roses, which I think have really adapted to the drought. Now these roses, windflower, have been in the ground, I think probably for 10 years, something like that, and I love them. Now when I planted them, there was some hazel trees over this whole area, and they were competing with the very thirsty hazel trees, and they were 3-4 meters high, multi-stem, so they were just sucking the water out of the ground. Then I got rid of the hazels, and obviously without that competition, these roses have done better than any roses in the garden. And I don't think that is just because of the variety, the windflower. So what happens, I looked at experiments on Google Scholar, and they found that if you've got roses in drought conditions, they actually have 1.4 more times root weight than they would normally. So they increased the root to shoot ratio. They measured the roots and they measured the top growth. And they found that when they're in very dry conditions, their roots became much larger comparatively. And so they were able to feed the plants. So I think these roots now are really nicely well down. And when you go lower in the soil, obviously there's more water. And so they are better able to keep on flowering. And my uncle David Austin, who actually bred this rose, this beautiful windflower rose, always used to say that if you want to grow roses really well and you want them to be perpetual flowering, and these are an English rose, so they flower on and on and on during the growing season, then in order to do that well, they do need good moisture and they need good rich soil. And we certainly have neither of those there. And so he added to that point, you should actually not have anything really around their base so that they get more moisture. But obviously most of us love growing them with salvias, urbinas and everything else, so we wouldn't really want to grow roses just on their own. So that shows you that really plants can adapt. If they're short of moisture, they will generally, many species will be able to put on more root growth to find that moisture so they can sustain the growth. And trees are the same. So when you plant trees, for the first 3 or 4 years, before they become established, before their roots are really down in the soil, they will grow 70% faster if they don't have any competition from grass or plants around their base. And they've proven this very conclusively. So when you plant a new tree, you should try and keep it free of weeds or competition for the first 3 or 4 years before their roots have gone down to a good deep level. And when you think of the trees over there, which I planted 40 odd years ago to create the windbreak, those are all, you would never think of watering those because they're just way down, and they're trees that are suited for that area. So just bear that in mind. And I think these rules that say just shove on an inch every week in dry periods is really counterproductive. You don't want to waste water. It's a very precious, finite resource, and you want your plants to grow in a very self-sufficient, sustainable way, especially if you're short of labour. It's just me one day a week here and Dave. So on to that. So how much water do you give them when you need to? Well, first of all, when you need to. So watch your plants. Some of them, like the Amikia, it will tell you, but just watch them and get to know when they're telling you, when they're crying out that they need moisture. And I do remember when I planted those 1,000 trees 40 odd years ago, I planted them on April 1st for a week. Because that's when we completed on the house, and it was far too late. They were shooting, and then we had a very dry spring. But and it's always better to plant in the autumn rather than the spring, in case you get a dry spring, because you want the roots to be established. I wasn't able to. I went ahead with it, and even though some of them died off, the next autumn, when we had that rain, the autumn rain, which gives you the lammus growth, a lot of them actually reshooted and came back. And then they will be tougher plants to withstand the future compared to if you'd watered them when they would have kept their roots up in the surface and not go so deep down. Now we have a rain gauge, and that is invaluable. After we have a rainstorm in dry weather, you'll see it's pitifully empty now. I'll go out and I'll see how much we've had, because it is very difficult to know how much rain you've had, and it's very nice to know exactly what they've had. So when we plant big specimen trees in people's garden, and recently we planted massive mature hedges 3 meters high on a new build in Stamford, and it's imperative to, obviously you're spending that money, you want those trees to establish fast. So then I ring up the nursery we've got them from, and I find out exactly how much water they've had on the nursery. Now they might well be growing in troughs. These hedges were grown in troughs in the ground, so they will have had some water moving sideways. So we will need to give them more than they had in the nursery because they've been lifted and they've put into new conditions, and their roots won't be out into the soil yet. But it's always worth doing that. We've also put some huge, beautiful yews in it, Southrop. And again, we find out from the nursery how much they had per day on the nursery, so that when they're settling in for this first year, we can give them a bit more than they had there until they get established. So, vegetables, watering vegetables. I think people tend to do far more water on their vegetables than they need to. And certain vegetables, if you actually water them too much, like tomatoes or many vegetables, you give them lots of water, they don't taste so good. I always like to keep my tomatoes very much on the dry side, so the more sugars per liquid in the plant, so their Brix number, which is the indication of sugar, is higher. And I think the same with many plants. When you have commercially grown vegetables, they often water and feed them massively, and they don't have anything like the intensity of flavour that homegrown ones do. And the other reason for not watering too much is because with something like parsnips, carrots, things like that, if you give them too much water, they will have more top growth and less root growth. And you want the root growth, so you are just wasting it. Now, there have been so much research done on the right water for the right vegetables, how much, and commercially they will water something like summer cabbage to get the best yields. They'll water it something like 12 times during the harvest. But they've also found that if you just water it once, 2 weeks before harvest, it will be almost 50% more than if you didn't water it at all. So there's a very good book about vegetables. I think it's Know and Grow Veg by John Bleasdale. And that has all sorts of charts and tables about what you should water and when to maximise the effect. Because at home, we don't want the massive, biggest crops necessarily. We just want it to be, well, I want it to be fairly easy to look after and to taste delicious. Similarly, beans, you don't want, the time that you want to water runner beans is when they're flowering and podding up. And when they're podding up, beans and peas, if you water them at that point, you will get bigger yields. Potatoes, if you want early potatoes, early new potatoes, it's best to give them very little water, because then they will come and produce tubers quicker. And the same with tomatoes. I tend to water them very sparsely until they go into flower and fruit. And when they start to fruit, then I water them a bit more, because they will fruit earlier if you give them less water. Now, the other thing about watering vegetables is if they're in a raised bed, they're obviously going to have less water than if they're in the ground, because moisture moves sideways in the soil in response to the plant's osmotic pressure, which sucks the water towards the root hairs. Now, if these lettuces were growing in a bed, then obviously the water could move sideways, but here it can only move from the backside of the raised bed to the plant. So it hasn't got the huge resource to pull it over with. So you do need to water a bit more in raised beds, just bear that in mind. And then there's the issue of quantity, how much? Now, a lot of people just put a sprinkler on and leave it. But you don't know how much is going on, unless, of course, you put a tray and you catch the water and see. But then you don't necessarily know what you should put on. So what I like to do is often either I'll water from a can, so I know it's a 2-gallon can, and with something like a courgette, they do probably want 2 gallons per plant. Maybe if you want maximum yields, maybe once every 2 weeks or something. And I would do it in one big go, so it goes right down and it's in the soil and the plant sucks it up. If I came and watered it every day, then I'd have a little scattering and I just gave it a splash. Then you have all the water is up in the surface of the soil, and so therefore the plant's roots will stay on the surface of the soil. If the water goes right down, then the roots will chase it down. And I do think that makes a huge difference. And that's why my roses are so good, because they're nice and deep. You might not want to use a can, you might want to use a hose. So there is a lovely meter, which I've got on my hose pipe, and that tells you how many litres you're putting on as the hose is on. And that is really useful, because it saves you wasting water and it saves you wasting time. And I'm always shocked when I wait for a tap to fill up a can, I'm always shocked at how long it takes. So I will either measure how long it takes for the hose to fill a can, and then if it takes a minute to fill a can, then when I'm putting it on a garden plant, I'll know a minute will give me 2 gallons. Or now I've discovered this massively useful flow meter, I'll get the flow meter to do it for me. Now, the other thing is, once you've got moist soil, and in the spring when the soil is moist, I will always put on a mulch, even in the veg garden, in all the ornamental borders, wherever I can. If I've got the time, I'll put on a good organic mulch, and it will be just something I get pretty much free. It'll be either bark shreddings from my local tree surgeon who will drop off a trailer load, or it will be digestate, which will cost me the transport cost, but it'll be a lorry load, or green waste, anything I can get really cheaply or freely. Better still, I will use as my mulch. And that not only seals the moisture in the soil, it also obviously improves the soil, so it's got much better watering holding capacity. So the lovely thing about the range gauge is when it's got 1 millimetre of water in the rain gauge, it's supplied 1 litre per square metre. That I find invaluable. The other top tip I think is I hate waiting for cans to fill under the tap. So I've got lots of water butts, which I've got from all different things, all around the garden. And I find it much easier to dunk the can in and to go and do it. And I think that's the best thing ever. And in my greenhouse, I use capillary matting. You need to replace it every few years because it does lose its capacity. But all different grades of capillary matting. But if you get a nice thick one, it can hold something like 9 gallons per square metre or something phenomenal. So it really saves me watering my tomatoes and cucumbers and things like that all the time, because I haven't got venting greenhouses, I haven't got automatic irrigation, but capillary matting is just the best. Now I have got something like 80-90 pots here, but I don't water them. They are nearly all baseless. So I cut the bases out and they support themselves in feed and water. And things like yew, Taxus baccata, olives, things like that, just love that situation. My grapevines, roses, all sorts of plants. So if you love having pots and you haven't got time, taking the bases out is just phenomenally good saving of your time, so you can spend more time doing things that you want. Finally, automatic irrigation. Lots of people love automatic irrigation, but many garden contractors that I work with loathe it. I loathe it. I like having those hoses on hedges when we plant them, those new trickle irrigation, which has little valves within the irrigation pipe, so that the same amount comes out at the beginning and the end of the pipe. I think it's lovely when you first plant hedges and possibly trees, but I just find that if you get plants reliant on automatic irrigation, then they will never become sustainable and you are wasting water. And so often, after a few years, voles or rats will eat through bits of it, or squirrels, and it won't work. And then suddenly you see a whole patch of the border dying because no one's twigged it. And when they're using irrigation, which they obviously do on big container nurseries, they will go out and check that irrigation daily. Because if something happens to it and regularly jets get blocked up or hoses get knocked out or whatever, if they don't do that regularly, it can be have a really high cost implication. So I loathe automatic irrigation. Many people love it, but for me it doesn't work at all. And I am very mean with my watering. I'm probably extreme because we don't have mains water, so all our water comes from a spring. And so I'm always conscious that it's a very finite resource. I think when you're plugged into the mains, you think, oh, it's always going to be there, I'm always going to be fine. But here I'm a bit more, so I treat it with a lot of respect. But I think because it is a finite resource for everyone and climate change is becoming so extreme, I think it's much better if we can learn to treat it with respect and get our gardens and our plants to adapt to how we can manage them without ploughing on lots of unnecessary water. And my final tip, which I always bang on about, is the shadow of the gardener is the best fertiliser. And you could say the shadow of the gardener is the best irrigator in this case, because watch your plant, see how they're going, and when you see something needs sorting out, sort it out.